Hi. Hey guys, welcome to my presentation on coin voting. My name is Han. You may know me from Wallet and a few other projects that I've done for Zcash. Today we are going to talk about different aspects of coin voting. And let's begin with some possible use cases. The one that most people know about and are, let's say, excited about is its usage in governance. So some of the applications would be, for example, choosing board members, electing members of organization. Could be, for example, ZCG, or could be ZF, could be ZChub, any organization. And other things that you could do with that, choose which projects you want to fund. So there are many things that you can do. So I have listed them here: project funding, lockbox distribution, and choosing priorities between different protocol enhancements. If you have if you're short on time and short on resources, and you need to prioritize any effort, you could ask the coin holders to choose between different options. Other things you could do with that is do an airdrop. So the airdrop usually is determined by the amount of ZEC that you have. So if you have the idea would be for Namada, for example, if you want to airdrop one Namada for one ZEC or any proportion, you would have to prove your ownership of ZEC at a given snapshot. So this could be a mechanism for that. The advantage of doing Zcash coin voting with this mechanism is that it's shielded. You won't have to prove your balance in a transparent way. And finally, the last use case could be to show that you have ownership of a particular number of coins. That would be, for example, interesting if you are an exchange and you want to show that you have enough funds to cover your customers, the balance of your customers. So in coin voting, we have different roles. It's rare that the whole process, the whole workflow of coin voting is done by a single entity. It's practically the same idea that you have behind running an election in a real life election. So, for example, if you take the election of president, U.S. elections, you have the biggest number of people would be the electors. We call them the voters, hundreds of millions of them. But you also have the government. So that's number one. But you also have the government that organizes this election. So they will be in charge of defining the candidates. So mostly by law, but you have to define what you're polling, what candidates are acceptable, and essentially define when the election should begin and when it should end. So these are parameters that are crucial for the election, and that have to be decided before the election even starts. Then the third category, the organizer, basically the people who are going to run the logistics of the election. So in real life, it could be is equivalent to the polling stations where the electors come. They have a ballot. They show their ID. They register. They cast their ballot, and it goes into a box. So in coin voting with Zcash, pretty much the same idea here. This will be put into a blockchain, and then the organizer does not have more control over the election than this mechanism, than the fact that it's facilitating the process of the election. You will not be able to invent, to create vote. It will not be able to suppress voting. And finally, the fourth category are the auditors. So people who are going to go through the ballots, count them, validate them, count them, and publish the result, the outcome. This is very important for this system to be trustless, so that every of these people in these categories cannot disrupt the election, even if they wanted to. So as a voter, you have the ability to cast votes up to the power associated with your number of ZEC. So if you have, for example, 1,000 ZEC, you're going to have 1,000, well, not exactly 1,000, but you have a power of voting that is proportional to the number of ZECs that you have. So if you have 10 times more ZEC than the other person, then you can be vote 10 times more than the other person. So this is the cornerstone of this mechanism. You will not. It is not about identity. It's about your ZEC holdings. Okay, so let's see what's the next slide. All right, so let's talk about. So this presentation would go through the different categories of people, and at any time between the switch to a different category, please feel free to ask questions, because we're probably not going to go back to the previous category. So now we're going to talk about the voters, the electors, and once we finish with that, then we would talk about the board and so on and so forth. If there are any questions about the introduction, feel free to ask them now, or otherwise I will just continue with the first category. All right, so I see no questions, so we continue. So to the voter, so the elector is the guy who's gonna cast a vote on a particular motion, and the first parameter is obviously the question. So, for example, we can have an election that says, "What is your favorite cryptocurrency?" Right. So that would be the question. Has to be clear. Should not be ambiguous and lead to wrong answers. To vote on an answer that you didn't intend. But the system itself doesn't actually verify any of this stuff. It's just parameters to the system. Then the elector has to choose between one of the multiple answers that are on the ballot. There are no limits on how many answers the election can have, but I would say typically if you have more than 5 or 6 answers, it may become not so easy to manage. Then one interesting characteristic is that the voter does not get to enter their choice. He has to pick between. They have to pick between one of the possible answers. So we don't have the ability to do a write-in at this point. Technically, it should not be very hard actually to do to support the writing. It would be possible just by adding a message, encrypted memo associated with a ballot. But at this time, there doesn't seem to be much demand for that. The protocol associates is at the granularity of a Satoshi. So technically speaking, if you have one ZEC, you would have 100 million Satoshis, which means that you would have 100 million votes. But it's very rare that, well, I would say nearly impossible that a vote has to be at that level of precision that you would need to break a tie between two candidates just because they have a difference of one ZEC. So I think for practical purposes, seems more logical to have 1,000 votes per ZEC, and that's how the application is coded. But we might at the protocol level is at the Satoshi's level. The when you vote, you have to vote with orchard. You know that ZEC can be either transparent in the sapling or orchard. To vote, these funds have to be orchard. You cannot vote with transparent, and you cannot vote with sapling funds. The reason behind that is mostly technical. Is because the zero knowledge proof that enforces the rules of the election have to be written in a circuit, and Orchard is the only recent technology that allows us to do circuits without toxic waste, without having to do a trusted setup. And so this is, I would say, expected. If you're thinking about a shielded election, I think that so far these are reasonable requests, reasonable requirements. The last point here, not the last one, but the one to last point here, that may not be intuitive, is the need of a registration range. And that is very important to know, because this has an impact on your ability to vote. So as an elector, when you look at an election, you would have a particular range of blocks. It would say election starts at height A and ends at height B. What it means is that you must have created your Orchard nodes during that range of blocks. And by creating the Orchard nodes, I mean you must have received these funds during that period. So if you have received the funds after height B, after the end of the range, they are not going to be usable. We cannot vote with them. Right? Anything that happens after the end of the range, basically they never happen. So the good thing about that is that you don't have to hold your coins in the Orchard, or even hold your coins in your wallet after the end of the range. And the range doesn't have to do anything with the moment you vote. This is the moment where you have to prepare your coins. You have to put your coins into Orchard. So after the end of that registration range, that last height is essentially a snapshot. We take an image, well, virtually we take an image of the blockchain, and all the coins that are in Orchard at that point are usable for the election. If you spend them before, obviously they are not usable. If you spend them after, it's fine. Okay, so the end is a snapshot. The beginning is a bit stranger. The beginning means that if you have Orchard funds that you acquired before that date, they are not usable either. So bear that in mind. There are some elections that would make that range short, maybe like 1 month, 2 months, or longer, 6 months, 1 year. It's really up to the organizer of the creator of the election. But you have to be mindful of what these numbers are, the range is. And the last feature of these, what's the last thing that you can do as a voter is to delegate your votes. So instead of saying that you're putting your coins on a particular motion, you're on particular choice candidate, you can take part of your coins or all your coins and send them to an address. So every elector, when he inputs his seed phrase to prepare his wallet for voting, would get an address, which is a unique address for this particular wallet. So this is like a unified address, if you want, but for voting only. And this address allows you to send to somebody else. So if you want to send it to somebody else, then you ask that person for their address. If they don't have any funds, they just create a new wallet in this voting app. The voting app would give them a voting address, and you just have to send them your coins, your vote, so that they have something to vote with. Obviously, all this stuff is, when I say send funds, I misspoke. None of this stuff will actually cost you any real funds. Right? The equivalent of 1 ZEC to 1 voting power is entirely virtual. You are not spending any money here, and the voting itself doesn't have a fee. It's all virtual voting coins. So that's it for voter. We are trying to make this process as easy as possible. So there's an application for voting. The application is standalone, and it's not part of any other wallet. There's a library. You can integrate that into wallet, but you can also actually use just the application as a standalone application. All right. So that's it for this. Okay, next. Oh, actually, I talk about that. So let's repeat that stuff quickly. We have a start and end block height. The nodes have to be created after the start height. Right? So the point here is that if the start height is 1 week ago, you cannot vote with coins that you received 2 years ago. Right? If you want to use the coins that you received 2 years ago, you have to make a self-transfer. You have just to make orchard-to-orchard transaction, which sends the coin to yourself. And that will refresh the nodes. There will be new nodes which are created after the start height. Right? So this is not really a blocker, but this is something that you have to do. Right? Then the end height is where we take the snapshot. So the nodes have to be unspent before at that time. You can spend them after, but you obviously cannot spend them before. Okay. So that's a reminder of the beginning of the registration range. Okay, delegation is that every wallet will have its own vote address, and to delegate, you send your votes to another vote address. So instead of sending to a candidate, instead of choosing one of the candidate among the different choices, you can also send to an explicit address, and that means that person then receive your voting power. And it's one-to-one, there's no fee. Okay, so let's talk about the privacy of an election. The votes themselves are very similar to orchard transactions. That's how we are able to use orchard funds as a source of voting power. And we leverage the same technology. There are also Hello 2 circuits. Most of the stuff is the same. We have obviously added some stuff to make the chain untraceable between elections. So what we have here is that when you make a vote, the source of your funds, the source of your funds are untraceable. We don't know where the funds come from. Then where you vote is also untraceable. We don't know. Nobody can tell who you voted for. Delegation is the same thing. If you delegate to another person, that person does not know where the votes came from. And actually, if you don't keep track of it yourself, you would not even know where you sent your votes. Right? Last point here is a bit more subtle. The votes are unlinkable between elections. So here the point is that if you have two elections, you will be able to reuse your coins. You have two elections, you can vote with the same coins on these two different elections. It's perfectly fine. And what we're saying here is that if you use the same coin to vote for a particular choice on election A, and you use the same coins to vote for a certain choice on election B, it is not possible to know that these coins were used at the same coins were used for both elections. We cannot tie the ballot A with the ballot B, even though they are sourcing from the same coins. That allows you to have decorrelate your choices, meaning that without this functionality, we could tie just the fact that you are leaning towards, for example, left or let's say that your election is about presidential election, and if you are voting towards the Democrats, and then another one you are saying that you also want to do this, and if it was linkable, then you could say, oh, Democrats are voting more likely to vote that way on another election. Okay, but there's a caveat. Because the votes are decrypted at the end, and because we have to be transparent and report the outcome, we have to show the result of the election. So if we show the result of the election and we see that we have votes that are very, very similar based on the amount of ZEC that were used. So for example, here we have some votes, some ballot that spend 1,426,248 and for a particular candidate, and on a different election, exactly the same amount was put on candidate B. Most likely, the same person voted for candidate Y and candidate B. Right? So it's essentially the same level of a side channel analysis that you would be able to do if you were going through an exchange. Right? If you withdraw a certain amount from an exchange and you put that exact amount on another exchange, and these amounts are like very strange, like 1.62.5, 1.625 ZEC, and you deposit the same amount on different exchange, then it's most likely that you are the same person. Right? So I wanted to point out that technically the protocol at the does not have linkability, but because of the results have to be disclosed, there's linkability at that level. Okay. All right. So that was the electors. So if you are elector, you can stop here. That's pretty much all you need to know for about coin voting to use the system. Right. So there's I think there's a few experiments that are going underway to test the mechanism and run some elections to get familiarized with the system. I will talk about this at the end. But regarding the elector, that's all you need to know. If instead you are a person who wants to create an election, and we provide all the tools to do election are open source, right? So you can do all this stuff by yourself. Then you can, let's talk about this now, right? So this now is about the person or the entity who wants to start a new election. So we go over the different parameters that you have to set up. And these are essentially the same parameters that that we have seen before, because you create the election, well, it's going to be the same stuff that voters will see on their ballot. So the first thing is election name. Right? So the election name should be something that is fairly identifiable, something unique, because this is the hash of that name would be the distinguisher between elections. Right? So the way we make elections ballots untraceable and linkable is we are hashing them with this particular election name. So the election name should, for example, include the name of your entity and something that clearly establishes that this is the election that we're voting for. That this is separate from the question itself. The question and the question/motion, the stuff that you are polling your constituents on, that's gonna not be part of the hash. And then you have the list of answers. So in the screenshot that you have on the right here, you see ballot question. So that would be the question and the motion, and then ballot choices. That should be the answers. You just put one answer per line. Then you have to enter the registration block height start and registration block height end. We talked about this before, so that's these are just the two heights that defines the range. And then we have a little flag that I didn't mention before, this signature required flag. The signature required flag means that your election will requires spending signatures from the voters. If you uncheck that, a voter can vote with only their full viewing key. So it's a bit less secure. It's less secure because you're not asking your electors to prove that they have ownership of the coin. You just ask them to prove that they have viewing key on the coins. Most of the time, people don't have a viewing key unless they have the secret key. So the difference in practice may not be very, very big. So it could be acceptable for your election to poll based on the viewing key only. But if you are polling and you don't want to have an entity that has published their viewing key to the internet, then you have to use something more secure, and you should ask them to prove ownership of the coins. In any case, even if you say that you want ownership of the coins, the voter the elector who wants to be extremely safe about their funds can wait until the snapshot is taken, then move their funds out of their voting wallet, and then vote with the funds of the voting wallet. Because once the snapshot is taken, the funds do not have to be in the wallet anymore. Right? So you could move your funds out and then vote. In that case, even if the system is completely broken and ballot actually leak your secret key, the funds are not there anymore. So it's still going to be safe. But obviously, we are doing all we can to prevent security issues. So this stuff is being reviewed, being audited and tested, and so on and so forth. All right. So the election board does this. It's just a simple form. You fill the form and then you click on the button create. That should be at the bottom, but it's truncated. And this will scan the blockchain, do some calculation, create a nice little JSON file that has all this information packaged, and is off to the next participant in the chain. So once the election board has decided and created the election file, they don't have to run the election itself. Right? So this is the role of the next entity, the next authority. Okay, so the next entity. All right. So now we are talking about the election organizer. The election organizer is essentially the polling station, as I said earlier. Right? They receive the election file from the creator, and they are going to print out the ballots. They're going to print out the ballots in the world of internet is essentially putting a file online. Right? So they put this file online. There's software for that. Right? They don't have to do much. They have to run a particular voting server, which points to that file, and there's a URL that would be created, and that URL is what the electors, the voters, have to use to link up with that particular election. Obviously, we can run multiple elections at a given time, even though I'm not sure it's going to be very that often. But in case it happens, you have different URLs for different elections. And this election organizer who runs these servers They cannot decrypt the votes, right? You as an elector, you send your ballot to that organizer, but your ballots are encrypted, and it's only the creator who has a particular secret key, which will be able to decrypt these ballots at the end. So at this point, the organizer, if he's being honest and if there's no collusion between the organizer and the creator, the organizer does not have visibility on the how the election is going. Even if the organizer gives the decryption key to even if the creator gives the decryption key to the organizer will be able to see the trend, to see what's going on with the election, but they will not be able to add up more votes or twist or skew it in a particular way. But there's a risk. The risk is that if they can see what's going on, right? If they can see, for example, that candidate A wins over candidate B, and they want candidate A to win, there's a risk that they decide to hide the votes that they receive if they receive vote for candidate B, right? So if they are not able to create new votes, but with a single server, there's a chance that if this entity is dishonest and in collusion with the creator, and the creator wants to have a particular outcome, it's possible that they see that some votes are not to their liking, and they decide to just not add it to their box of ballots. Right? So in order to eliminate that risk, right? So I'm talking about here that they may maliciously reject votes. We have implemented a special blockchain to run the election. So there's the first model, the model where you have a single voting server would mean that the electors trust that entity, the voting server, to run the election honestly. That's full trust model. But if you don't want to risk, if the election is too big to take that risk, what we want to have is multiple validators, so multiple voting servers, who are all validating the ballots that are incoming. And now, if one ballot is, if one of these entity is dishonest, then it will be enough that the rest, 2/3 of the rest, behave honestly to have consensus. Right. So we're talking here about a blockchain that is application specific. So that blockchain only exists for the particular scope of voting, and allows us to run without having to trust the voting server. So depending on how many voting server you want to have failing, for example, if you say that there's a chance that 2 voting servers are dishonest, you would have to have more honest voting server, right? The rules is 2/3 of the servers have to be honest. And the technology that we use for that is the commit BFT. So this is a consensus library. It used to be called Tendermint, and that's the one that is used for Cosmos. So if you are familiar with Cosmos and ICBC, the engine is commit BFT, and that's the one that we're using. So we are not, to be clear, we're not putting our stuff on ICBC. You do not need to have Atom. I think Atom is the crypto for Cosmos. This is not the using Cosmos blockchain. This is using the same software, if you want, that Cosmos uses, but it's creating its own application blockchain. The alternative to this, right, software that would seem easier to use that having to create an own blockchain is obviously to use Zcash main chain. Right? So another way to imagine this stuff being done is that your ballots are sent to Zcash. Right? So you send your ballot to Zcash on the main chain. We already have this mechanism of consensus that would prevent people from rejecting votes that data that is valid. But the problem here is that Zcash, the memo size is too small. A Zcash memo is at maximum half a K, and the votes are about 10K per note. So if you're talking about typical vote that has two inputs and two outputs, which is the same as an Archer transaction, that's 20K. 20K means that we would have to have 40 memos. 40 memos. So you have to pay for that, of course, out of Zec. Plus, you could run fairly easily out of blockchain space, and also it's a bit not so cool to put your voting data and have all this stuff in the Zcash blockchain forever. So, in my opinion, this is kind of like spamming the Zcash blockchain. Right? In the solution we use, the application blockchain essentially lives as long as the election is running. So at the end of the election, we close the blockchain. We can archive the data and use that for audit. But once a new election begins, we can have another blockchain. There's essentially zero cost to creating a blockchain with this mechanism. All right, so that's the reason why we have that. This is essentially a proof of authority model because you are relying on the fact that the blocks are signed and validated by a certain number of validators. You can run with one validator, but running with one validator will be essentially the same thing as running in full trust. So that's just overhead of having a blockchain for absolutely no reason. And the next step would be 4 validators. And then next one is 7 validators. With 4 validators, you can have one dishonest one. With 7 validators, you can have 2 dishonest ones, and so on and so forth. Every time you have to add 3. That's because the Comet BFT is using 66%, 67% of honest validators for the blockchain to work. And the good thing about this is that if you don't have that many validators or you don't need that many validators, you just run one, and the degraded deployment is essentially the same as having a singular vote server. So yeah, that's the way the stuff is run. So in conclusion, right, if you have this stuff, is essentially you start with the Zcash blockchain. This is where we pick up the nodes, and then once we have the snapshot, the rest of the transactions, the voting transactions, will happen in the application's blockchain. But in terms of how you do the stuff as a user, you don't see that. It's practically the same thing as Zcash. You won't see the difference, except that blocks are created faster in the application blockchain because it's not a proof of work. It's a proof of authority. Just these guys have to sign the blocks. So we're creating blocks at the rate of 1 per second. Roughly 1 per second, which means that when you vote, you're making a transaction to that blockchain. It takes a little bit of time to have that validated and then replicated. So it's not instant, but it's fairly responsive. It's about like 10 seconds for this to happen. All right, so let's see now the voting app. So here I have some screenshots of the voting app. has several tabs. The overview tab will give you a summary of the election. So that gives you the title, the question, then different options, and how much voting power you still have. Right? And then the history tab gives you, well, the history of your votes. So these appear as transactions. You have a hash of the vote, you have the address where you send the vote to. So if the vote is sent to a particular candidate or particular choice, there's essentially an address that is hidden behind. So you will have the address of the candidate, but we also say that that's choice single. If you delegate to someone, then there will be no choice. That's why the bottom one, the one that says 50, the amount 50, there's no choice. It's actually a delegation from you to that particular address. Then you have a tab for voting. Right? The tab for voting, don't think it can be simpler than that. You just choose who you send your coins to and how many, and you click vote. And finally, on the right side, you have the similar thing, but instead of sending to a choice, you are sending to an address. So as a reminder, it will also show you your personal address. Obviously, you don't want to send to your own address, unless you want to try. But normally, you will ask the other person for their vote address, and then you will send your coins to them. Well, not your coins, but your votes to them. Okay, so we have 10 minutes question, 10 minutes left. Okay, no question. Okay, and I think we are practically done. Oh, okay, the last person, right? The last entity is the audit. So the audit in this situation is basically people who are going to check that the election run properly. Okay. So this is the last phase. And the one thing that's interesting about the election audit is that election audit and the election, the guys who are the counters, right? Then in a normal election, you have authority that goes through the ballots and then opens the boxes and look at the ballot and then count. In our case, since it's all electronic, these guys could be you, could be anyone who wants to install the software. Because you have the blockchain, you can connect to any of the validator and synchronize with the application blockchain. This will synchronize your node with all the ballots that were submitted, and then you will also validate these ballots, make sure that the votes are correct, I mean, not spending coins that never existed, no double spending, all kind of stuff like that, right? So to make sure that this is not a fake vote. Also checking the signature that you have ownership of these coins, and then it will show you. It would make the tally. Will count the result per candidate and show you a nice graph. So this application, you can run it. The only thing that it runs really that it needs really is the decryption key that is coming from the creator. When you have created the election, you were given a seed phrase. This is a seed phrase of this election. Without that seed phrase, well, you don't. Everything has been done for nothing because nobody can decrypt the votes. So it's very, very important that the creator keeps the seed phrase. It's better if the seed phrase is kept secret for the whole duration of the election. But it's even if this disclosed, all you lose is the privacy of the outcome. You would be able to see the progress of the different candidates, but you really cannot decrypt the votes of the electors themselves. Right? So if you delegate A to B, then this is not going to be decryptable with the election seed phrase. All right. Okay. So only 5 minutes left. Let's take questions if you have any. All right. Can the voting system be easily implemented in other ways? All right. That's a very good question. Yes. Well, easy is a loaded question. I don't really know what is easy or not easy. What I can tell you is that the library for doing all this logic is a crate. It's a separate crate, and the voting software, the stuff that we saw earlier, is only using that as a front end, right? So the logic in the voting app is very minimal, right? You can integrate that into other wallet fairly easily. You can ask why I didn't put it into Y wallet. One of the reasons I didn't put it in the Y wallet is because, oh, okay, let me finish with the first before. It's because I figured out that the model for election is more flexible than a wallet because you could load different elections. I wanted to go with a model where you can load an election as a file, then participate in an election, and then save that file and load another election, and so on and so forth. So that model didn't really fit the Y wallet. Y wallet uses like a Minty account, but you don't really switching easily between accounts between. So the just because I wanted to experiment with more flexible model. Is it or will it be open source? It is all open source. You can go to my GitHub, GitHub slash HHANH00, and anything that begins with Zcash -vote is part of this. So we have a few things here. There is the Orchard circuit modification. So there's a branch for that. Well, it doesn't start with Zcash vote, but that's the only thing that is changed in the Orchard circuit crate is implemented there. Then you have Zcash vote that implements the logic of creating ballots on that stuff. And then we have 4 projects, one for the creator, one for the server, one for the voter, and one for the auditor. So the 4 roles that you have seen are represented by 4 different apps. Why is the start height necessary? It's because when we have to find out if you are eligible, if your funds are eligible for voting, we have to scan the blockchain. So if we said that there's no start height and we scan the entire history of Orchard, then we would have to scan the entire blockchain, and that is essentially the same as synchronizing an entire wallet. This can be very long. So this is a choice that is made that the creator of the election makes. If they want no start height, then they can say it starts at Orchard activation. So they need to know then, if they do that, that every voter has to download the entire Orchard blockchain, and they have to scan that in order to be to vote. Would deletion work for exchanges to be able to delegate to the customer that owns the funds? Yes, they could. I'm not sure that I mean, technically it's possible, right? Yeah, technically it's possible. I'm just not sure they are willing to go through the extra difficulty of running the this whole process, because at this time I think that most of them don't even hold their coins in Orchard. Right? They just hold it in transparent coins. Okay. Elections are public and can attract adversarial observers, given that voters need to prepare their funds to cast votes or the best in a safe way. Well, you prepare your election by moving coins to Orchard, and if you move from Orchard to Orchard, is fully shielded. So unless I don't really see anything that an observer can see besides maybe a spike of Orchard transactions, but what really can they infer by that? I don't really see. The safe way is that it's like the same as when you do exchange to exchange transactions. You shouldn't really like unshield something just for voting, and then vote with that exact amount. So, for example, if you vote and you at the end we see that there's a ballot for like 1,000. If it's a small amount, it's probably not very meaningful. But if there's a large amount of ZEC that was put into a vote, and it happens to be the exact amount that was taken out of the exchange, then the exchange would know that this is the guy who voted for that particular motion. But again, it requires collusion between the exchange and the well, not just the exchange, because the vote results are public. Okay, have you considered end-to-end verifiable election protocols that do not require viewing notes? Yes, but it's actually very hard because, well, maybe there's a technology that I don't know about, but to rank the results and to be able to know that there is no cheating, then I would say that you would need to have the knowledge of the vote value, because, for example, what prevents the organizer to take one vote for one by one and consider each election to be a series of sub-election of one vote, right? They have to be able to compute the result of the election if they receive only one vote, right? So by taking that only one vote and then discarding everything else, they should be able to know who's the winner. So that means that they're able to somehow decode the vote. Then they repeat that with all the votes in isolation. That means that they should get the amount. I'm not sure I was super clear, but I did think about a way to avoid that. But unfortunately, I don't think it's possible. How can election organizer protect voters from copycat election put out by the authorities? Yeah, so you have to put something that really identifies you. You don't call yourself election A. Right? You have to call yourself as, I don't know, if you organize it, you say ZCG, blah, 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 right? So then the adversary has to put also ZCG, blah, blah, blah. And then it's super suspicious, because you will say, why is this guy without ZCG also saying that the election is under that authority? So what I would recommend is that you host your election with a domain that you put in the election name, and the domain has to be fairly well protected, because these days your domain is your identity. So having the domain inside the name is okay. With a trailing invisible character. Well, that's actually a good point. We just forbid invisible characters. We just say that the election names have to be ASCII, capital ASCII, blah blah blah. Right? Do you have a background in governance from other community? So can you tell us what you learned? What else that can help these people to move on? Oh, I mean, that's a very good question, but no, I guess not. I mean, no, I don't really have a strong thing about that. Personally, I think that, okay, just my personal opinion here. I think that it's not the best way to do governance. I mean, okay, I think it's the best way to do governance, knowing that we have limitations. For example, if you're talking about does it prevent CBO's attack? No, it doesn't. Right? It's not identity. You're voting with your coins, and their argument that says there's strong arguments for saying should one guy be has more weight because he's richer than another person, even though he doesn't know anything, he was never involved with Zcash, but he's super rich? Or should he have more voting power than a person who's very knowledgeable but doesn't have financial resources? Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's that person. It's not necessarily the case. The point here is that we cannot make a system that is private. So we are not asking to know anything about the voter, and base it on something that is not tied to your coins, because anything else that is not tied to your coins can be replicated, or can be faked. The strength, in my opinion, the strength of Zcash is privacy, and privacy and fungibility of Zec. And here is the only thing that we can use, because anything else is not fungible, right? And it has to be one-to-one. We cannot make a system where we say, like for example, cubic or non-linear voting. Or if you have 1,000 Zec, you have a less proportional way than if you have 500 Zec. This wouldn't work, because then the guy who has 1,000 Zec, he will just split his coins into two wallets, two anonymous wallets, and then leverage the fact that there's incentive for the smaller holders. The fact that that our currency is private means that it's possible to split, and there's no cost in splitting. So this being factored, I don't see any mechanism which would not involve in some way having registration, having some KYC, or having some knowledge of the voter. For me, coin voting with all these flaws, meaning that the technology is what it is, right? We cannot have a start height that is very, very large, because as we have asked, it takes a long time to compute. For all its flaws, this is, in my opinion, the best we can do. Okay, so that's it. And if you have other questions, and if you want to see a demo, I have some demos on my YouTube channel. And also, of course, ask questions on the forum or on the Wova app, or on the YouTube channel. Okay, other than that, I hope that you found it interesting, and I will see you around on the forum. Okay, take care.